Hey guys, it's Jeriel, bringing you another video on Clash of Clans. So today I'm just going to go over a few of my clanmates' bases. They wanted me to review them for them. Not necessarily an expert, but I've definitely done my research, so I'll see if I can't help them out a little bit with this video. So going down the list here, so MLG Pro is one of the people. So it's a fairly similar base setup to mine, in the sense that he has his town hall in the middle with a compartment. He has his wizard towers in a triangle formation. I personally would spread these top two out a little bit more to make it an even distribution. Maybe move this left one over to where the Barbarian King is, and this right one over to where the elixir storage is, just for that even coverage. Though I guess it might help a little bit having that little bit of extra strong defense around his town hall, so that he doesn't get too starred. But also too, if you switch these two around, the Barbarian King would be better centralized as well. You could place his clan castle right there to be a little bit better centralized as well. Here again, he has his mortars all really close together. Leaves a huge dead zone, as you can see. Basically that whole lane is completely dead for those mortars, which leaves them really vulnerable to ground attack if they make it in there. But at the same time, it makes it a little bit harder to get to them because they're going to be having that strong defense, with them basically covering each other at a distance there. I personally would spread them out though to make that triangle formation. It is pretty important to have, just so that your base has even coverage. As you can see, basically the top left and right, and even the very top there, doesn't have any coverage at all from the mortar, which could lead to a little bit of a hole in his defenses over here. As well as his air defenses is in a triangle formation. I guess it's impossible not to be in a triangle formation with it being 3 buildings, but at the same time I would probably switch these two around just to have that perfect triangle shape. Although if you move it over here, it'll be exposed to the outside, which you kind of want to have your air defense a little bit protected, just so that it doesn't get taken out right away. When you're doing the balloon minion strategy, you usually try to go for a base where the air defense is on the outside, so you could take it out real quick. So maybe not moving it there, maybe instead moving it down here or somewhere else, basically, just so that you can have that even coverage, and so that it's not out on the open on the side here. His Dark Elixir storage is inside a wall, so that helps a little bit if you're farming Dark Elixir, as well as his Dark Elixir drill. Personally, I would be upgrading that Dark Elixir drill just so that you get that extra bit per hour. It really helps. Just having that passive income in the background from that. So his archer towers seem to be fairly spread out, which is good. Leaves even coverage from them, as well as his cannons are fairly spread out as well, leaving fairly even coverage from them as well. Except for these two on the very left and right. They seem to be a little bit of out of place. I might move them in here where these two elixir storages are, just so that they cover the center a little bit better, and so that it's a little bit more evenly distributed, so that your entire base is evenly distributed or evenly covered by them. As far as his outside buildings go, they are a little bit more spread out. Personally, I like to have them right up against the walls just so that they're better covered from defensive buildings, as you can see here. Even the archer tower doesn't cover that army base, or that army camp, sorry. As well as over here on the side. So those buildings on the very sides can be sniped off from archers, which really, it really adds up if you think about it. It's a fairly easy way to gain percentage if you're trying to farm for trophies. Just sniping off those buildings on the sides. So I personally would move those in right up against the walls. But I asked him about it earlier, and he said the idea behind it was so that any giants or defense attacking troops would kind of ignore the outside buildings and go in towards where his defensive buildings are, and would hopefully get taken out by them before any infantry can help them out with any extra damage. So like archers, barbarians, or wizards would get caught up on the army camps, and the let's say the giants would go in and get pummeled by the archer towers and mortars, leaving them sort of a little bit more vulnerable because they don't quite have the attack power to get all the way in there. And that would leave his infantry open to, or leave their infantry open to attack from the defensive buildings after any giants or any other heavy damage soaking units would be taken out. I've seen it work sometimes, but in general I find it pretty much a waste. Most players are smart enough to snipe off any outlying buildings, or just send in wall breakers, and generally their giants or anything else are strong enough to withstand the damage from a few of the defensive buildings there, while their infantry takes out any outlying buildings. But in general, it looks like this base seems to work out pretty good. Could use those few small improvements, but for the most part it's pretty good. He does have most of his walls upgraded to level 7, which does create that little bit of intimidation, which actually helps out a lot. I personally even skip over some bases that have high level walls or high level buildings, of course. Most noticeable are the walls, but also if you have your rows of towers up to level 6, they turn all purple, and I definitely try to avoid those. As well as if he upgrades his cannons to level either 9 or 10, they turn all gold, which is another visual deterrent. Yeah, just using that visual intimidation helps a lot. Other than that, I don't really see any other things that I personally would change. So overall, a pretty good base. So moving on to next base. Chris here said he wanted his base looked over. It's definitely a little bit of a different base setup, one that I personally haven't seen before. But it follows the same basic idea where any opponents would have to drop their troops on the very outside just because of the buildings having their borders and the walls being pushed out all the way to the edge. So it might make it a little bit more difficult to place wall breakers or defensive troops. You'd have to be pretty precise, especially if you wanted to get into these inside compartments. Most would go after these ones that are sticking out, which are also funneled with spring traps there. It's a pretty good strategy. As far as building placement goes, he has his wizard towers all evenly distributed, as well as his air defense, which is good. So his base is pretty much completely covered with those two. And then there's the mortars, which are in a pretty good triangle shape. Looks to cover pretty much all of the base. There is a little bit of a gap down on the bottom left, though. Not much you can really do about that without changing up the base setup a lot. But it seems pretty good. The mortar dead space is covered by a lot of other defensive buildings, so they should be fairly well defended, which is good. So he's got his 4 hidden Teslas fairly spread out. 2 of them on the inside here covering the town hall, which can also be mistaken for giant bombs, which might be a deterrent for some people. And then 2 on the outsides here, which would be hard to detect from a first glance. If you're attacking this base, you probably wouldn't know that they're there. You could suspect that there are some traps there, but my first guess wouldn't be that hidden Teslas would be inside there. So as far as his archer towers and cannons go, they are reasonably spread out. As far as the rest of the defensive buildings go, there isn't very much else he could do with them. I might switch out the cannon and the archer tower here, maybe. Just so that you're not having 2 cannons right beside each other there, and so that the archer towers are a little bit more spread out. As you can see at the bottom here, there's 3 almost right beside each other, and even a 4th one very close together. But this bottom triangle is pretty good, so maybe even moving that archer tower to a different spot might help. I might even consider moving that archer tower over to where this cannon is up at the top. It would make it symmetrical as well, having an archer tower on the bottom and at the top, and not having such a heavy coverage of archer towers over on this side. He is boosting his gold mines, which I guess he's really looking for gold, which, I mean, can't really blame anyone for doing it, but I personally don't like boosting my collectors. It just seems like a waste. You can either use those gems to buy resources, or use them for troops and farm them. Having your collectors there is a good passive resource collector, but you definitely gain a lot more resources from attacking bases, so boosting your barracks would probably be a better idea. But everybody plays differently, so that's definitely up to him. So we also have his Dark Elixir storage right there in the center with his Town Hall, as well as an Expo, which is set to ground only. I personally would set that to both ground and air, just for the fact that you might get attacked from a Balloons minion setup, especially being a Town Hall 9, and not being fully upgraded. It looks like he upgraded a little bit prematurely there. So also he has his Barbarian King and his Clan Castle right in the center, and with his wall set up on the outside here, makes it a little bit harder to bait out, just because any troops will be taken out on the outside, and not be able to get to the inside very easily to to bait out the troops, or the troops from the tank castle or the barbarian king. It is interesting to see though that he doesn't have his archer queen. Maybe he is saving up for it, or maybe not. He doesn't have very much in there. I don't know why, but I personally would be making that a priority, getting that archer queen. It's definitely very helpful to have. I've seen lots of fights being won specifically just because of having an archer queen, so that'd be one fairly major suggestion I would have. Other than that, it seems like a fairly solid strategy. Not too much I would change other than the few suggestions I said. So one more base. Will I wall here? So he has a pretty good, pretty well upgraded Town Hall 9. I watched him upgrade from Town Hall 8. He was fully maxed out at Town Hall 8, for the most part anyways. So he's well on his way. He has his Archer Queen up to level 6 already, which is pretty good. The only thing I would say is having your Archer Queen and your Barbarian King on the outside there might not be such a great idea, because they're easily baited out and then taken care of as far as a defense goes, but he might be using them for attack all the time, so that might be why they're there. As far as the inside here, he does have his clan castle centralized. It looks like it'll be fairly difficult to get to. The spot I would go to is there. If I were to try to bait them out, as you can see, it is sticking out a little bit there. But on the right side here, he does have a giant bomb. Not on the left side, but it would be hard to pick that out. It's not really noticeable there, although he does have the gap. He does have his 2 air defense there in the center, as well as 2 at the ends here. Interesting setup. It does cover the base pretty well, which is good, especially with it being a narrow base. Most balloon minions, or really any air strategy, does look for a little bit of a narrow base, which this one is sort of narrow. So either coming from the top or the bottom would be the best idea. So as far as evenly distributing those, it seems fairly good, just because they probably would come from the bottom or top. And so you have one there or one there at the top to take care of any initial attack, and then 2 in the center to really try to hammer out anything that's left, as well as the hidden Teslas, of course, which leaves you with a fairly strong core, just because getting there and maybe not even suspecting that they might be there would really hurt you. Then he has his mortars right here, and up at the top there, in a fairly good triangle shape. Excuse me. The only problem I see here is that the bottom compartment there isn't very well protected by them, which I guess it is a little bit more difficult to cover the entire base, having a little bit of a more narrow and long base like this one. But the bottom is pretty well covered by extra archer towers down at the bottom there. What else? So he has his builder huts on the outside here. So as far as that goes, I would suggest moving them in towards the center, maybe in reach of some defensive buildings, just because any experienced player would take those out first and then move on to the base. I know the main idea for that is to either slow them down or to have an inexperienced player maybe go for those or forget those and leave it to the last bit and then run out of time having to run around and try to catch them all. But from what I've noticed, any experienced player will go after those first and then move in towards the center to where the base is. So maybe moving those in towards some defensive buildings might help. So other than maybe moving in the heroes and the builders' huts, I don't see much else I would change with this setup. Maybe getting a cannon or archer tower into these side compartments just because they are fairly open to attack. There isn't really much protecting the very tip here on either side. So getting into those looks fairly easy, especially if you're trying to farm for resources. That's definitely the spots that would be attacked. So having those covered is probably a good idea, even if only just a little bit more. But other than that, it seems like a fairly good setup. He does have his wizard towers leveled up to the point of having a fairly good intimidation level, and of course his walls on the inside being level 8 to help out with that as well. He also has his collectors boosted, which, like I said, I'd rather boost my barracks just so that I could get more attacks in, because that's where I generate most of my resources. But everybody plays differently, like I said, so there's that. So I guess just quickly go over my base setup, since I went over everyone else's, give myself a little bit of criticism. As you can see, the army camps and the spell factory there are a little bit exposed to being picked off by archers. But right after that, there's the traps, and you run into 3 fairly strong defensive buildings. Same with the other side. I was considering maybe moving my archer tower out and my cannon out a little bit more, just so that it covers these 3 buildings a little bit better. But the more I thought about it, the more I figured I should just leave it there, because after they take out those 3 buildings, they'll be running in towards here, where they're just going to either get taken out by the hidden Tesla and the defensive buildings, or run in and get hit by traps. Especially this giant bomb on the outside here, which might not be so obvious to some people. I did have these 3 traps out at where the giant bomb is earlier, but I noticed that I was getting attacked more from the south and the north more, which I wasn't really expecting. So I moved those out there, which helped with my defense a little bit. As far as my 3 main defenses, they are evenly distributed. Unfortunately, for the wizard towers, the west side isn't so well covered, but I have this mortar here, usually anyways, offsetting that, because also on the other side, the mortars aren't really covering the east side very well, or as much anyways. Unfortunately, this air defense is a little bit offset as far as forming the triangle. It would be right where the town hall is, but obviously I'm not going to move my town hall to have the air defense there. I do have 2 hidden Teslas here to help out protecting the town hall there, and my clan castle and barbarian king centralized basically as much as they can be without being directly in the center. The center tile is actually right there. You can kind of see it. I have my dark elixir storage and my dark elixir drill right there, being pretty well protected, so As you can see, I'm trying to build up my Dark Elixir a little bit. I do want to go for either my minions or my Hog Rider upgrade. I want to try to start using the Hog Rider strategy, but I don't think I'll be able to do it effectively until probably level 4. I did try it out a couple times. It did work okay, but it definitely could be a lot better. Other than that, I am kind of using my decorations here as a bit of a distraction. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but placing troops seems to be a little bit more difficult when there are random things in the way. I don't know why. Maybe it's just me. As you can see, I do have my builder huts right in there, right protected by defensive buildings, so they're not really out there in the open where they're going to be easily picked off. They're in there fairly well protected. Not that they're super important, but it just makes it that much harder to get to 50% or 100%. I did have this set of level 7 walls protecting my air defenses, but then I figured I might as well start building on the outside, just because as far as the air defenses go, they're there to protect against air, which are going to go over the walls anyways. So protecting the outside and getting these outside defenses protected, I thought was a little bit more important. But some people might disagree. I personally think I should actually be upgrading these joints in the wall first, just so that it makes it a little bit harder to open up multiple compartments at the same time. Other than that, I don't really see too much else. If you have any suggestions for any of these bases, leave a comment below. Yeah, thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.